The air in our suburban Ohio home was always thick with unspoken rules, a delicate ecosystem of blended family politics, maintained by my stepmother, Laura's, relentless cheer, and my father's quiet retreat into his newspaper. I, Chloe, was 19, trying to navigate my freshman year of college online while living in the house that never quite felt like mine after Dad married Laura 5 years ago. And then there was Ethan, Laura's son, my stepbrother, 2 years older than me. Ethan was the golden boy, handsome, a business major at the state university with a smile that charmed everyone but never quite reached his cold, assessing blue eyes. To the world, he was the perfect all-American stepson. To me, he was a presence I'd learned to carefully navigate, a roommate who demanded a certain deference, a competitor for my father's dwindling attention. It happened on a Tuesday, meatloaf night, the 4 of us around the oak table. The conversation was mundane, Dad's work, Laura's book club. Then, out of nowhere, Ethan set his fork down with a precise clink. He looked directly at me, a strange, possessive glint in his eye. "You know, I've been thinking," he said, his voice casual, conversational. "Chloe and I should just get married. It makes perfect sense." The silence was instantaneous and absolute. My father's fork froze halfway to his mouth. Laura's smile became a fixed, painted-on thing. I let out a nervous, choking laugh. "What? Ethan, don't be ridiculous. You're my brother." "Stepbrother," he corrected smoothly, as if that single syllable changed everything. "And it's not ridiculous. We already live together. We know each other's habits. We're comfortable. It would simplify everything for the family. Keep the assets consolidated." He said it like he was proposing a merger, not a marriage. My face burned. "Ethan, stop it. That's not funny." "I'm not joking." His gaze held mine, unwavering, a challenge. "I'm serious. I'm going to marry you, Chloe. It's just a matter of time." My father finally found his voice, a weak, rumbling sound. "Now, Ethan, that's a big statement. You two are family." "Exactly. Wouldn't you feel better, sir, knowing Chloe was with someone you trust, someone who will take care of her, someone already in the family?" He made it sound like a logical, protective arrangement, a business deal with sentimental benefits. Laura reached over, patting my father's arm. "Oh, Tom, the kids are just talking. It's sweet, in a modern way." Her tone was light, but her eyes darted between Ethan and me, a silent message passing to her son that I couldn't decipher. I pushed my chair back, my appetite gone. "It's not sweet, it's sick. You're my brother." I fled to my room, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm of violation and disbelief. That was the beginning. The public declaration, the boundary he had vaporized with a few calm words. He didn't let up. It became his refrain. To relatives at Thanksgiving, "Just waiting for this one to come around." To his friends who came over, "Meet my future wife." He'd say it with a laugh, but his eyes on me were dead serious, a campaign of psychological possession. I told my father it made me uncomfortable. He'd sigh, a man overwhelmed by conflict. "He's just awkward, honey. He doesn't know how to express fondness. Don't make a big thing out of it. He'll get bored." But Ethan didn't get bored. The campaign escalated. It started with gifts, a necklace left on my pillow, a sweater in his favorite color for me to wear. If I refused them, he'd look wounded, and Laura would chide me for being ungrateful. "He's just being thoughtful, Chloe. Don't be so cold." Then came the digital intrusion. I'd find my laptop open on a different browser tab, my social media logged in from unknown devices. Subtle things, deniable. When I confronted him, he'd look baffled, innocent. "Why would I do that? You must have a virus." The worst was the nights. The quiet, almost imperceptible sound of my bedroom door handle turning. The first time I bolted upright, my voice a strangled, "Who's there?" The shuffling in the hallway would stop. I'd lie awake until dawn, my dresser pushed against the door. I told my father about the door. He checked the hinges, said they were old and probably settling. "This is an old house, Chloe. It makes noises." I felt myself shrinking, becoming a ghost in my own home, hyper-aware of every footstep, every glance. My stepbrother's fondness was a cage being built around me brick by brick, while my family smiled and called it protection. The breaking point, the event too dark, too humiliating to speak of aloud, happened the night of my 20th birthday. My dad and Laura took us to a nice restaurant. Ethan was on his best behavior, charming the waiter, toasting to my bright future. Back home, a little tipsy from the single glass of wine I'd allowed myself, I went to take a shower. I'd just stepped under the warm spray when I saw it, a faint, blinking red light in the vent above the toilet, a tiny, high-resolution camera. My blood turned to ice. The violation was so complete, so calculating, it emptied my lungs. I wrapped a towel around me, shaking violently, not from cold, but from a primal, consuming terror. This wasn't awkwardness. This wasn't misplaced affection. This was predation. I didn't scream. I didn't tell my father. I knew what would happen. Denial. Excuses. Ethan would never. Maybe it's from the previous owners. You're being paranoid. I took the camera, a sophisticated wireless model. I hid it. And in that moment, standing dripping on the bath mat, a cold, clear fury began to burn through the fear. He thought I was prey. He thought his campaign of gradual possession would wear me down. He was wrong. I was no longer just Chloe, the anxious stepsister. I was a witness, and I needed evidence. The next day, I applied for a student loan I didn't need and used part of it to buy my own equipment, a tiny, powerful audio recorder, a hidden camera of my own, disguised as a phone charger. I started a digital journal, password protected and backed up to a cloud account no one knew about, logging every comment, every gift, every creak of my bedroom door handle, with timestamps. I played the part. I became quieter, more withdrawn, which Ethan mistook as submission. I forced myself to smile at his jokes, to accept a coffee he made without watching him make it. I made myself small to make him feel big, to make him complacent. I was biding my time, because I had a plan. To expose him, I needed more than a bathroom camera. I needed the key to his own hidden world. I needed to understand why. And for that, I had to get into his sanctum, his home office, a room even Laura didn't clean. My opportunity came when Dad and Laura left for a long weekend to visit Laura's sister. Ethan announced he was going on a guy's camping trip. He packed his truck, gave me one of his lingering, possessive looks, and left as soon as his taillights disappeared. As soon as his taillights disappeared, I got to work. His office door was locked, but years of watching him, of being forced to know his rhythms, paid off. I knew where he kept his spare key, taped to the underside of the third drawer of the filing cabinet in the garage, a childish hiding spot for a man who thought himself so clever. The office was obsessively neat, smelling of his cologne and ambition. I went straight for his computer. It was password protected, of course. I tried the obvious: his birthday, his mother's birthday, the name of his first car. Nothing. Then, with a sinking heart, I typed in my own name, Chloe 1. The screen unlocked. A fresh wave of nausea hit me. My name was his password. I was a fixture in his digital world, a commodity he had claimed. I didn't have time to be sick. I started searching. External hard drives, cloud storage linked to his browser. His documents folder was meticulously organized: business, personal, investments. And then I found it, a folder simply named C. Inside were hundreds of files, photos of me taken without my knowledge, studying in the living room, getting the mail, blurred shots through my partially open bedroom door, screenshots of my private social media posts, downloaded copies of my college papers. But the deepest layer was in a subfolder encrypted with another password. My name didn't work this time. I thought about the camera, of his sense of ownership. I tried my future wife. The folder opened, and the world I knew ended for the second time. It wasn't just me. There were other folders, labeled with initials, with dates going back to high school. Photos of other girls in similar invasive shots, downloaded private messages, intimate conversations, and documents, Lists, detailed, chilling lists of their routines, their fears, their friends, their parents' work schedules, strategies for approval and acquisition. It was a library of predation. Ethan wasn't just obsessed with me. He had a pattern, a pathology. I was just his current most convenient target because I lived under the same roof. At the very bottom of the folder was a scanned document, a life insurance policy, taken out by Ethan a year prior. The beneficiary was not his mother. It was me, and the policy was for a staggering $2 million. A footnote, added as a writer, specified that the payout would double in the case of accidental death. The pieces of his monstrous logic slammed together. Marriage would give him legal control. An accident afterward would give him a fortune, all while playing the grieving husband. I wasn't a future wife to him. I was a business plan with a tragic, profitable exit strategy. I sat in his chair, in the silent house. Armed with the digital trove of Ethan's predation, I became a strategist. The scared girl was gone, replaced by a cold, focused operative. My goal was no longer just to escape, but to ensure he could never do this to anyone else. To do that, I needed to dismantle his perfect world piece by piece, starting with the pillars that held it up, his academic reputation and his financial scheming. My first move was anonymous and precise. From a public library computer, using a secure VPN, I created a generic email account. I composed a message with no emotion, just facts. I attached a selection of the least graphic but most damning files from the other girls' folders, enough to show a clear pattern of stalking and digital harassment, but not enough to re-traumatize the victims by exposing their most private moments. I included screenshots of the lists he'd made, his meticulous notes on their vulnerabilities. I sent it to the Dean of Students, the Title IX office, and the head of the business school at his university. The subject line was simple: Pattern of predatory behavior and digital harassment by student Ethan Ross. I timed it for a Friday afternoon, ensuring it would simmer over the weekend in official inboxes. The following Monday, Ethan left for campus tense and earlier than usual. He didn't return until late, his face a thundercloud. I was cooking pasta, forcing an appearance of normalcy. "Rough day?" I asked, my voice light, almost sweet. He slammed his keys on the counter. "Some idiot with a grudge is trying to cause trouble, sending lies to the school." He watched me closely, a predator testing the wind. I widened my eyes, feigning concern. "What kind of lies?" "Stupid stuff. Photoshopped things. They're investigating, but it'll blow over. My record is spotless." He said it like he was convincing himself, the first crack in his arrogance. But it didn't blow over. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched him unravel. He was constantly on his phone, his voice a low, furious hiss in the hallway. "My lawyer. Prove it. Procedural violation." The university's investigation was thorough. They contacted the women in the files. Empowered by the anonymity of my leak, several of them came forward. Their testimonies corroborated the digital evidence. The spotless record was now a mosaic of credible, horrifying accusations. I executed Phase 2. The life insurance policy had been gnawing at me. A $2 million policy on a college student with no dependents was bizarre. A $4 million payout for an accident was a screaming red flag. I needed an expert. Using another portion of my student loan, I hired a private financial forensic analyst, a discreet woman named Miriam who worked remotely. I sent scanned copies of the policy along with Ethan's full name and date of birth. "I believe this is part of a larger financial fraud scheme," I wrote. "I need to understand the structure and the players." Miriam's report arrived a week later. It was a detonation. The policy wasn't standalone. It was linked to a web of financial instruments, a small, high-risk investment fund Ethan had quietly started with seed money from a private investor. The investor was a shell company, which Miriam traced back to Laura's brother, a man with a history of insurance fraud who had done time in Kentucky. The structure was a classic dead peasant policy scheme, but twisted. The fund was failing. The only way to make the investors whole and generate a massive profit for Ethan and his uncle was the double payout death benefit. I was the designated peasant. My accidental death would save their fraudulent fund. The report also revealed Ethan had taken out massive student loans far beyond tuition costs, funneling the excess into this fund. He was leveraged to the hilt. My death wasn't just a creepy obsession, it was a financial necessity. Now I had the full picture. A sexual predator who was also a financial predator, backed by a corrupt family network. The pressure on him was mounting from all sides. The university formally suspended him pending a full disciplinary hearing. The whispers among his friends turned into avoidant glances. He stopped leaving the house, spending all day in his office, the glow of his computer screen visible under the door late into the night. He was becoming desperate, and a desperate animal is the most dangerous. The final catalyst was my father. For weeks, he'd been a passive spectator to the tension, blaming it on Ethan's school stress. But then a letter arrived from the university, a formal notification of suspension for egregious violations of the student code of conduct. My father, ever the rule follower, was shaken. He confronted Ethan at dinner. "Son, what is this? This letter says suspension. For harassment?" Ethan's mask of calm finally shattered. "It's a witch hunt, Tom. Someone's setting me up because they're jealous. Probably some girl I wouldn't date." His eyes flicked to me. I kept my gaze on my plate, cutting a green bean with exaggerated care. "What girl, Ethan?" My father's voice was firmer than I'd heard him in years. "The letter says there are multiple complainants." "They're lying," Ethan shouted, standing up so fast his chair screeched. "All of them, and I think I know who's behind it." He pointed a trembling finger at me. "Her. She's been jealous of my relationship with Mom and you since day one. She's sick. She's probably fabricated all of it." The room froze. Laura's hand flew to her mouth. My father looked at Ethan's contorted face to my calm one. This was my moment. The chessboard was set. I had waited for him to make this move, to accuse me openly. I put my fork down, I looked at my father, then at Laura, and finally at Ethan. "I have something to show you all," I said, my voice eerily quiet. "In the living room, now." The confusion on their faces was almost pitiable. I walked out of the dining room, not checking to see if they followed. I could hear their hesitant footsteps behind me. In the living room, I had connected a small HDMI cable from my laptop to the large TV. On the screen was a folder icon labeled "For the Family." "Chloe, what is this melodrama?" Ethan sneered, but his bravado was thin, cracking. "Sit down, Ethan," I said. It wasn't a request, it was an order. For the first time, he obeyed, sinking into an armchair. Laura and my father sat on the sofa, bewildered. I opened the folder. I had curated it carefully, not the worst of it, but enough. I started with the less invasive photos he'd taken of me, the one through the window, the one of my back as I got the mail. My father leaned forward, squinting. "Chloe, what are these?" he asked. "They're from Ethan's computer, taken without my knowledge or consent." I clicked to the next set, screenshots of my private social media messages. My father's face began to pale. "This is an invasion of privacy," Laura cried, but her voice lacked conviction. She was watching her son, whose face had gone ashen. "It gets worse," I said flatly. I opened a document, his list about me. "Chloe, routines, vulnerabilities, father's approval, social isolation. Friends, only Sarah, weak bond. Fears, being alone, financial insecurity." My father read it aloud, his voice trembling with dawning horror. "My God, Ethan, what is this?" "It's a lie! She planted it!" Ethan shouted, jumping up. "Sit down," my voice cut through his like a whip. He sat. I had never used that tone before. The power shift in the room was palpable. Then I opened the subfolder with the other girls' initials. I didn't show photos, I showed the lists, the cold, clinical breakdowns of their lives. A.B., father alcoholic, uses for emotional leverage. J.L., fear of dogs, staged encounter with neighbor's Labrador to gain trust. Laura began to weep silently. My father looked physically ill. Finally, I pulled up the scanned life insurance policy. I zoomed in on the benefit amount, on the accidental death rider, on the beneficiary line, Chloe Marie Ellis. He took out a $2 million policy on my life, I said, my words dropping like stones into the silent room. It pays $4 million if I die accidentally. Then I pulled up Miriam's executive summary, highlighting the connection to the failing investment fund and Laura's brother. My death isn't a romantic fantasy, Dad. It's a business plan, an exit strategy for a fraudulent scheme. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by Laura's choked sobs. My father stared at the screen, then at Ethan, then at the screen again. The man who avoided conflict at all costs was now staring into the heart of a conflict he could not unsee. Ethan saw the judgment in their eyes. The game was up. His mask didn't just slip, it exploded. "You bitch!" he roared, launching himself from the chair, not at me, but at my laptop, intent on destroying the evidence. But I was ready. I yanked the HDMI cable. The screen went blue. I stood my ground, holding the laptop behind me. "It's copied, Ethan, in a dozen places, emailed to lawyers. This is over." He stood there, chest heaving, his face a grotesque mask of rage and defeat. He looked at his mother, who was shaking her head, whispering, "No, no." He looked at my father, who had tears streaming down his face, not of sadness, but of a profound, gut-wrenching betrayal. "Get out," he whispered, the words ripped from his throat. "What?" Ethan gasped. "Get out of my house," my father bellowed, a lifetime of passivity erupting into a protective fury I had never seen. Now, in the days that followed, our house became a mausoleum. Laura moved out temporarily, staying with a sister in another state, unable to face the wreckage, or, I suspected, her own complicity in creating Ethan by turning a blind eye to his entitled cruelty for years. My father moved through the rooms like a ghost, speaking in monosyllables. He'd look at me with a mixture of awe and terrible grief. "I should have protected you," he said one morning over cold coffee. "I didn't see it. I didn't want to see it." "I know," I said, and I did. His failure wasn't malicious. It was a weakness of character, a desire for a peaceful life that made him willfully blind. Forgiveness would take time, but understanding was a start. The external fallout was swift and public. The university expelled Ethan after a formal hearing. The story, stripped of my name but rich in salacious detail about a business student's predatory schemes, made local news. The financial regulator, tipped off anonymously, by Miriam, with my blessing, opened an investigation into the investment fund and the fraudulent insurance policy. Laura's brother was arrested. Ethan, facing not just social ruin but potential criminal charges for fraud and stalking, vanished. Rumor had it he fled to another state. I didn't care, as long as he was gone. With Ethan's threat neutralized, I faced my own future. I couldn't stay in that house with its memories of fear and violation. The student loan money was almost gone. I had my evidence, my safety, but no plan. That's when the letter from the insurance company arrived. It was addressed to me. With trembling hands, I opened it. It was a notice of policy cancellation and a check, not for $4 million, not for $2 million. It was a check for $187,430.17. A cover letter explained. Upon investigation triggered by regulatory concerns, the policy was deemed to have been obtained under fraudulent pretenses and voided ab initio from the beginning. However, according to state law, all premiums paid into the policy, with interest, were to be returned to the policy's beneficiary, me. Ethan and his uncle had been paying exorbitant premiums for over a year. That money, a small fortune he likely siphoned from his loans and his failing fund, was now mine. The irony was so profound it left me breathless. His plot to profit from my death instead funded my escape. It was a dark, poetic justice. I didn't hesitate. I used part of the money to retain a fierce, no-nonsense lawyer. We secured a formal restraining order against Ethan, filed in perpetuity. We also drafted a civil suit against him for intentional infliction of emotional distress and invasion of privacy, a sword of Damocles to hang over him if he ever resurfaced. With the remainder, I did what I should have done years ago. I bought a tiny, sunlit studio apartment in a city 3 hours away. I transferred my college credits to a university there. I worked part-time at a bookstore. I went to therapy to untangle the knots of trauma and guilt. Why did I feel guilty for destroying a predator? The mind is a strange place. I learned to sleep through the night without a dresser against the door. About a year later, I received a package with no return address. Inside was a single, cheap burner phone. It rang an hour later. I knew who it was before I answered. "Hello, Ethan?" His voice was thin, stretched, devoid of its former arrogant warmth. "You ruined everything." "You did that yourself. I just turned on the lights." A long silence. "The money. My mother won't speak to me. My uncle is in prison." "I know." "What do you want?" he finally asked, and I heard it, the helplessness of a puppet whose strings have all been cut. "I want you to never contact me or anyone I love ever again. I want you to get help, and I want you to know that I'm not afraid of you anymore. You have no power here." I hung up. I destroyed the phone. I never heard from him again. The final piece of closure came from an unexpected source. Laura reached out, asking to meet for coffee. I agreed, cautiously. She had aged a decade. The perfect, cheerful veneer was gone, replaced with a weary authenticity. "I am so sorry, Chloe," she said, tears in her eyes. "I knew he was difficult, possessive. I made excuses. I thought it was just him being ambitious, focused. I didn't want to see the darkness. In trying to protect him, I failed you. I failed everyone." It wasn't a full absolution, but it was accountability. We would never be close, but a tense truce was possible, for my father's sake. Today, I'm sitting in my own living room, sunlight streaming in. I am weeks away from graduating with a degree in psychology. I want to work with survivors of trauma. The check from the insurance company, the blood money, is almost gone, used to build this safe, ordinary life. I don't miss it. Sometimes, late at night, the fear tries to creep back in, the memory of a turning doorknob, the glow of a camera lens. But now, I have tools to fight it. I breathe. I look around my space, my sanctuary, earned through sheer will and evidence-backed courage. His stepbrother told everyone he would marry me. He saw me as a possession, a key to a fortune, a puzzle to solve. In his monstrous obsession, he never saw me, the girl who could become a hunter, the victim who could become a witness, the prisoner who could architect her own freedom. He thought his secret gave him power, but in the end, it was his darkest secret that set me free. I didn't just escape a toxic family dynamic. I survived a predator, and in doing so, I found a strength I never knew I possessed. The story that began with a terrifying declaration at the dinner table ends here with me, alone but unafraid, finally home.